And I'd like to welcome into the studio Philip Crowther, who is our Washington correspondent. And when I say our, I mean RFI and also France 24. Welcome and thanks so much for joining me in the studio in person.
Hi, Ollie. It's a pleasure to be here.
We usually have a phone line set up. It's late at night at your end and the afternoon our time. This is a change of scene for you.
Yes,
to be on the
really
same
strange,
timeline.
Isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Usually I add or subtract 6 hours each time that we talk, so we're on the same time.
We're on the same time frame now, but there's so many things to discuss with you. It was very hard going through all the possible subjects we could discuss, but I thought maybe the one that we could just begin with is the race to the White House 2020. I mean, we're already 2019. We're looking ahead. These kind of things happen. The campaigning, it's going to be another big election. I sense. We just heard that Senator Bernie Sanders has become the latest figure to put his hat in the ring for the Democratic nomination. Let's begin there. I mean, he's had some harsh words to say about Trump.
Yes, he has. And, one thing that differentiates these candidates on the Democratic side is how harsh they actually are toward Trump. Do they want to come out swinging and insulting him from day one? Is that the tactic that they'll be using? Or do they want to be more of a centrist, somebody who will not be too aggressive toward a Republican president and maybe try and grab some of those Republican votes? Because remember that, one of the most important statistics right now in U.S. politics is how favorably Republicans see Donald Trump. I think when you look at polls, he's above the 90% mark of favorability among Republicans. So from somebody who was wildly unpopular with Republicans, he's turned into somebody they pretty much love. So that's something that Democrats like Bernie Sanders really have to think about. Will they come out swinging? He did. He called him a homophobe, a racist in the first interviews that he gave. Now, Bernie Sanders being in the race is really crucial, actually, because it was great news for Donald Trump. He really likes Bernie Sanders being in this race because you might have noticed already the Trump campaign and this White House as well are already preparing the groundwork for an election that they want to be about the rejection of socialism, of all things. And they, of course, associate Bernie Sanders with socialism. He does as well, in fact. Somebody like Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, is also considered a socialist by Republicans. So we're already seeing some of those candidates that Donald Trump really wants to go up against. In fact, there have only been 2 press releases from the Trump campaign about Democratic contenders who were in the race, and I think we've reached a dozen of them so far. And there were 2 only, one for Elizabeth Warren's announcement, one for Bernie Sanders' announcement, both of them seen as socialists by this campaign. So that's a really crucial element that I think you'll hear the White House and this campaign talk a lot about.
And Sanders, when he was running in 2016, he had all these kind of way out lefty ideas that were, maybe even other Democrats are looking at him saying, oh, that's really way out. But actually, a lot of Democrats have embraced these ideas and are now campaigning with them, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. To a degree that there are a lot of Democrats who would say, we don't really need Bernie Sanders in this race anymore because he has introduced his ideas into the Democratic mainstream. And that is also something that Donald Trump, of course, will be talking about. He is seeing this in some of the new members in the House of Representatives. For example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the one that's mentioned the most by Republicans. They really hate her because they see her as espousing these socialist views inside the U.S. Congress. So in a sense, Bernie Sanders might not need to be in this race, but he certainly feels he deserves to be in it, and maybe also is in with a chance of actually becoming the Democratic contender. It'll be difficult for him because it does seem like a new generation has come along, some of whom have embraced those ideas, those progressive ideas that Bernie Sanders stands for. It's an incredible field of candidates, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's more and more difficult really to differentiate them. We've got a Democratic Party that is going from far left to centrist and absolutely everything in between, and there are more to come.
Moving on now to the turmoil that has been created by this move by Trump to unblock emergency funds to build this wall on the border with Mexico. It's led to a dispute that caused a long-running shutdown of the government, and 16 states are challenging this. Where are we up to with the wall and the shutdown affair?
Well, the shutdown is over, and it doesn't look like there will be one for a while. Now, a while could be just a few months, I think, until there might be another possibility of a government shutdown in the United States. It's always over funding. It's always over the budget. Now, when it comes to this wall, there is that money that is now available to the president, having declared a national emergency. That means that he can go get funds from the Pentagon, for example, to protect the border and also to protect the military members who are already there to protect the border. So it's a little bit of a strange situation, this one. None of this is really being built yet. And we have to remember that when the president talks about the wall, it is not a wall on the entire border between the United States and Mexico. And when he says that it is already being built, that is really a stretch because anything that's being done right now are just repairs of existing sections of wall, of which there are some, for example, on the border between San Diego and Tijuana, and then between El Paso and Ciudad Juarez in Mexico on the other side. And with the funds that he has now, that he has available, he won't be building a massive wall. It's just not enough money. But it's all about messaging, isn't it? And so you'll hear the president say, first of all, that he is building this wall, that he is keeping this promise, and the slogans that the campaign is using have already changed. If you look at what the kind of banners that are on during Trump campaign events, and he's holding many of those, they say finish the wall now. None of which is really true. This wall cannot be finished. It hasn't really been started yet. So it's all about the messaging, really,
and the
as
momentum
usual.
Is there, isn't it? The momentum of this
it
latest
is.
decision.
And similarly to the support that Donald Trump has among Republicans come around to these ideas that might have seemed really far-fetched and strange during the campaign. Who would have signed up for a campaign promise to build a wall between Mexico and the United States? Very few Republicans, very few Americans generally, but they are now on board. Republicans are on board with this idea. Generally, Republican members of the party, but also, of course, Republicans in the House of Representatives and in the U.S. Senate. And that explains why it came to this emergency declaration in the first place. There is just simply enough support for it.
Now, looking ahead, what's going to be on the agenda in the next while? Trump's obviously got a busy schedule. What are some of the things that you're keeping your eye on?
Well, usually I like to say I have no idea what's going to happen in Washington next, because it's been like that, hasn't it? You never know what story might break from the White House or what the president might do next. But we do have a few dates at the end of March, at the end of February rather, that I'm really looking forward to and that I've put in my schedule. The first one is, of course, this trip to Hanoi, where the president will meet Kim Jong-un for the second time. It is simply extraordinary. I mean, we mustn't forget that the fact that a US president is meeting the leader of North Korea is just something that we never thought we'd see. And I think that one of the lasting images of the Trump presidency will be that first handshake between the two in Singapore. So this second summit comes along, and this is, of course, one where there's a little bit more pressure here. This is not just about them meeting. Donald Trump is somebody who likes to advertise the fact that he's just meeting somebody. He thinks that's a success in itself. So he believes that his meeting with Kim Jong-un was a success. But now something has to come of it. Will there be denuclearization of North Korea or of the Korean Peninsula? That is something that has been promised more or less by the two leaders. But will they really come up with something concrete in Hanoi? That's one of the big questions. Now, the other thing that's on my schedule is it's Michael Cohen. He's the president's former personal lawyer. He is scheduled to be testifying in Congress openly, not behind closed doors. And he is probably the person who not knows the most about the president, but certainly knows the most about his finances. And they are, of course, of interest to many people. That might include the likes of the president's tax returns and how he might be profiting from the presidency for his personal businesses. His hotels, for example, there's one right next to the White House, is just one of those examples. So that is really something to look forward to. It'll be another, blockbuster day up on Capitol Hill. We've had a few of those already, haven't we? We have indeed. And I was going to ask you, how long have you been on the White House detail? It's been a while now. Well, it's been 7.5 years in Washington, and I started covering the White House regularly halfway through Obama's second term, I believe. So I became a regular there about 4 years ago. So pretty much halfway during those 4 years, it came to the most sudden change and the biggest twist that I think I'll ever see in my career. I look back to election day when Donald Trump was elected, and I had to go during my on-air reporting from saying candidate Trump, which sounded more or less normal, to saying within a few minutes President-elect Trump, which is something that nobody predicted this, and none of us ever expected to be saying those words. So it was one of those moments where we really had to kind of shift everything and just roll with this new reality. I mean, I'm lucky to have seen two completely different White Houses, and it's like, as a colleague of mine once said, it's like we're covering a new country now.
Indeed. And what is the atmosphere like for you as a journalist with other journalists? Is there a certain amount of tension, or is it how do you all get along there?
Well, there's the usual tension because there are exclusives to be had all the time. There are sources who, will speak to one channel or to one media organization more than the other. So it's the usual kind of competition. I don't know whether there is more solidarity, between us. There might be because, we're all being attacked from all sides as being members of the fake news media by the president. It creates a certain sense of solidarity, but essentially we just keep doing our jobs and compete against each other, I suppose. What is strange in all of this is there is that public image that the White House has of attacking us as fake news. The president does it again and again, calls journalists the enemy of the people. When you look behind the scenes in our daily job, we do communicate with the press department and others in the White House in a pretty normal way. We will speak to them respectfully. They'll speak back to us in exactly the same way. We have conference calls with them on background or on the record. They want to get their message across. So they're still playing this game of communicating with us in the traditional sense. But then what you see on the surface from the president is pure aggression towards the media. And it obviously gets a little bit tiring, but we just have to keep on doing the work, don't we?
We do. Well, thank you very much, Philip Crowther, for coming into the studio here at RFI to have a chat with us.
It's been a pleasure.
And wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
And to be speaking to you soon, no doubt.
Absolutely. I'll be the other side of the ocean then.
Okay. Thank you very much.